Hi there, everyone. My name's Mandy Lunan, the food business coach, and welcome to this very special presentation that has been made especially for this event. I'd like to thank our hosts for having us today, and I hope that you find this presentation useful. So before we really get into it, I'd like to invite everyone to grab a piece of paper for your thoughts, jot down any questions you might have, and if they're not resolved by the end of this presentation, you can absolutely bring those to me at the live event on February the 22nd. You'll also be provided with all of the links I'm going to be mentioning. There's a special care sheet that will be emailed to all of you. So anytime I mention a link or a guide or a resource or a person who can help, that will be included on the sheet that's coming your way. So just sit back, relax, and let's talk about third-party distribution for your artisanal products. So my name is Mandy Lunan. I owned a specialty baking distribution company from 2002 until 2015 in Ontario. I relocated to the West Kootenays from Ottawa in September of 2020, and I absolutely love this vibrant, exciting agricultural community. It's been really wonderful. I began advising small food-based businesses in 2016, and I've worked now with quite a few across North America. It's been really fun, super rewarding, and really great to see folks on their entrepreneurial journey in all stages. So the first part of this presentation, we're going to be talking about selling your product to third parties. So this can be cafes, grocery stores, small local shops, that kind of thing, online marketplaces too, and the things we need to do to navigate and make sure that we're all ready to go before we jump right in. So why sell your product through a third party? Well, some of my clients find that the flexibility is easier than having a retail storefront or a farm stand. So rather than standing in one place for 8 hours waiting for folks to drive up, you can go and drop off your product at multiple locations and have that done in a few hours. So it's a bit more friendly to lifestyle, family, that kind of thing. There's less rent and less overhead in paying labor. So if you have a storefront, you have to pay someone to be at that storefront. That might not be realistic for your business model. There's also something I like to call the piggyback benefit. So this is when we're sold at a really remarkable shop, a big brand locally or across Canada. That's a really big deal. And somebody will be like, oh, wow, look at that. So-and-so Farms is now being sold at Safeway. I love Safeway, and I know that they're really choosy about who they allow in there. So I'm going to give these berries a try because they're probably really good. It also allows a wider net for distribution. So if you are selling to a chain, you can sell across the province, even across the country if you want to. It's pretty neat. Also, a lot of my clients enjoy wholesale because there's a guaranteed sale each week. So you have a more predictable cash flow rather than having a retail storefront that can be affected by weather, holidays, etc. We have a better idea of how much product will be moved through a grocery store or a cafe, that kind of thing each week. So before you jump right in, I usually recommend doing some testing and doing some exploring for your business. So first and foremost, before we're going to approach any third party, we're going to take a second and make sure our social media feeds are up to date. So this means on your Instagram and on your Facebook, is your website listed? Is the phone number correct? If you have a location for your farm or your facility, is that listed there too? Have you posted recently? If you haven't, try and populate the feed as best you can. A lot of third-party folks will take a look through social media to see what you're up to. So it's always good to have a nice up-to-date feed. You can also ask your clients. The poll function on Instagram stories is a great way to do this. Where would you like to see us sold? Where do you shop for your produce? Where would you like to see our dairy products next? It's a really good way to generate fresh ideas and things you might not have thought of. Also, having a copy and paste or printable request letter on your website is a really wonderful way to go about it. I call this the $1 million letter. So what you do is you have ask for us, and then when your client clicks on that on the website, a PDF will open and it'll say, "Dear blank," and the client can write in the name of the store, and it'll say, "I really love Mandy's Berry Farm. I wish that I could get Mandy's Berry Farm at your store, and I shop at your store frequently. As a customer, would you consider bringing Mandy's Berry Farm to your store?" And then it can have all the contact information for your business, info at Mandy's Berry Farm, reach out to get prices. And what this creates is something I call customer-led purchasing. So you're not doing cold calls, you're not showing up and asking managers if they'll sell your product. The regulars who are already there are requesting your product. And that speaks really loudly to a lot of the folks who do run these shops. So it's a fun thing to have available. You can also offer a test demo. Again, an asterisk is here because it's COVID times and not everybody is okay with free samples right now. And the local health authority might have questions or thoughts on that, or things might look a little bit different. But offering to come in, do a free sample day adds value to the store because people love shopping at stores where there's free samples. And the way that you can approach it is you can say to a store manager, hey, you know, maybe we might be good together. How about I come by for 4 hours this Saturday during your busy time? I'll give out free samples. I'll have boxes or bags of my product, and then I will only bill you for what I've sold after the fact. So it's win-win for the shops and the shop managers because it's not really going to cost them anything if you've shown up there and you're giving out free samples. It's add value and you're only billing for what you sell. And it can also help prove to shop owners and managers that there is a market for your product at their store, which is also pretty great. Spending time at smaller markets like the farmer's market or maybe the farm stand to figure out exactly who's buying your product, what people think of it. I find that folks out here are pretty forthcoming with their feedback, which is wonderful. So you can really have a chance to pilot your products and your ideas and see how people feel about it. You can also ask your industry friends, so your friends who are selling to Safeway or to the smaller artisanal grocery stores in your communities. Hey, I noticed that your product is on the shelf at blah, blah, blah. How's that going? How's your relationship with them? Does it move a lot of product? And kind of figuring out who the good people to work with are. It's a really fun way. Keeping in contact with people in your industry is so, so important. So before we even dream of approaching anybody, we're going to have a little checklist first to make sure that we're truly ready to go. First and foremost is your insurance policy. So call up your insurance agent and ask if your insurance covers third-party sales. So this means the second that that carton of milk or bottle of milk leaves your farm stand and goes onto the shelf, are you still covered with your insurance policy? And if not, what do you have to do to get the upgraded policy so you are covered? A lot of businesses will ask to see proof of insurance or ask to see proof of a $2 million liability. This means that, and this is pretty standard for the food industry, that you're insured for up to $2 million, just in case, heaven forbid, you make somebody sick or somebody comes after you or your business with that claim, you're covered up to $2 million. It's been brought to my attention by a local advisor that third-party sales is not typically covered under your farming insurance plan. So make sure that you have that conversation with your insurance agent and upgrade as you need to before you start to approach folks. Staking out the shops that you want to sell at. This is really fun and important before you approach anybody, is to just kind of go and gather a little bit of intel or have your staff or your family and friends go and look for you. So do they already have a similar product to yours? If so, this isn't a bad thing. This means that your product will sell well at this location if they already have something similar on the shelf. Really focus in on what makes your product different. The USP is your unique selling point. Everybody can produce a similar product, but they're really all different. They all have their special, unique selling points that make the industry so special. So what is your unique selling point? What makes your product different from everybody else's? Are the staff at the shop knowledgeable? I find that at smaller independent-owned groceries, the staff are very passionate about the local products. So chatting with the staff and hearing what they have to say can also be very useful. And also have a look at the price point. See how much your competitors' products are selling for, not because we're going to do anything like undercutting them, because that never works out nicely for anybody, but it's good to see what the price point is so you can set your prices in comparison with that. Good way to start out. So write that down, what they're selling their products for. Consider your professional boundaries. I see this happen a lot. Not to date myself here, but when I was a teenager in the 90s, I remember a supermodel was famous for saying she wouldn't get out of bed for less than $50,000 a day. So I say to my clients, what's your supermodel fee? What is your minimum order and what is your time worth? Would you drive to a store for a $100 order? Consider how much your product costs to produce, how much the labor is behind that product if you do have a made product that's not produce, how much is the labor for making cookies or producing milk, that kind of thing, and also the time to drive it over and the fuel costs associated with that. So figure out and think about what your minimum order in a dollar amount would be before you approach anyone so you don't end up with a difficult deal. Have your paperwork in order. This is all linked in the sheet that will be coming your way. All food processors in BC are required to develop, maintain, and follow a written food safety and sanitation plan that has to be approved by your local health authority. So you get assigned an environmental health officer who will review your plans and guide you, really help you out with your food safety requirements. I also have a food safety expert listed on that sheet as well, if you wanted to get her involved. But this is a really great thing that you have somebody there to guide you through this process, because it can be very tricky and lots of jargon and that kind of thing. So make sure that you have your associated permits and paperwork in order. The government website is very comprehensive, I found, and it's linked in the sheet that's going to be coming your way. Next, do you have a commercial licensed facility in place or lined up? So if you are producing, if you're making jellies, jams, pickles, cookies, anything like that, and that's what you've been selling, if you're going to begin doing that to a mass public and you're leaving the farm stand, you're leaving the farmer's market, you do have to produce from a commercial kitchen, and you do have to prove that. A lot of your third-party distributors will want to see that too. So do you have a licensed facility? Is there a food hub in your community you can use? Are you going to be building your own kitchen? If you do so on your own farm property, double check your zoning before proceeding. And something else to bring to your attention, if you are still piloting your idea and you don't want to make a large initial investment right out of the gate, there's something in the industry that we call incubation. Incubation is when you share an established place's commercial kitchen that's already licensed. So for example, I had a client who was producing bread, and she had friends who owned a pub, and that pub would close at last call, and it would be empty from 2:30 a.m. until about 9 a.m. when folks came in to set up for lunch. So what she did was she offered the owner an hourly rate, and she would use that commercial kitchen space between 3 and 7 a.m. to produce her breads. So it was win-win. She had a commercial space to produce from, she could carry her insurance and distribute to her third-party vendors with confidence. And the owner of the pub got some extra cash in their pocket, as well as they ended up promoting together, and she ended up selling them some bread for some of their lunch items. So incubation is also something to consider. In British Columbia, I've seen folks incubating even at community centers, places like that have large commercial facilities set up for weddings and events. It's also an interesting way to negotiate. But again, always check with your local health inspectors and your local health authority before proceeding into an incubation deal. Very important too, before you get out there, is to consider your delivery strategy. So will you be using a courier or a freight company, or will you be hiring somebody in-house to use your vehicles and go out and to deliver, and the costs associated with that? So have a good think on that. I understand that delivery out here is a major, major challenge. A wonderful advisor has given me some leads on some folks with refrigerated and non-refrigerated delivery that are included in the sheet that will be coming your way. So check those out. Also consider the needs and the limitations of your client. So for example, if you're making something that is fast perish and time of day suitable, like muffins or scones, your clients might want everything brought to them before 7 or 8 a.m. when they open, so folks can have the morning pastry. Whereas if you are delivering milk or meat to a large grocery store chain, some of those chains have rules about the deliveries happening before 1 or 2 p.m. So make sure that you're considering the needs of any clients before you start setting up your delivery strategy. Strategizing. We're always better together, especially when we're small producers. Networking and making friends with people in your industry is so important. I can't emphasize that enough. Bundling your deliveries together, bundling your schedules together can really help to save some time and money. Again, if it's appropriate to share truck space or delivery space, you should do so. Creating a food community Facebook page for business owners only is a really effective way to kind of figure this out. When I was still in the East, there was a lot of people doing small deliveries to Picton, Ontario, Prince Edward County, which is the wine area in Ontario, as well as Montreal. So whenever folks were headed in that direction, you'd kind of see a post go up. Hey, if you have a few cases of something that doesn't need to be refrigerated, I can drop it for you this week. Just hit me up. Those groups are great for that kind of thing. Or even a community text group is also really good, just to keep in touch and share space and share deliveries. Bundling your delivery strategy geographically is something I can't emphasize enough. So, on Monday, I do the North End. On Tuesday, I do the West End. Bundling all of your vendors together to make sure that you're functioning at maximum efficiency will save you so much time in the long run. And also consider taking a look to non-food distributors as delivery partners if it's appropriate. So, for example, somebody with a shirt company might be delivering into Kelowna once a week or once every 2 weeks. Maybe hook up with them if that's appropriate and share delivery space. Just really getting creative with your strategy can benefit you in the long run. All right, tracking and best buy dates. So the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is something we'll be discussing a little bit later in this presentation. So I'm just going to scratch the surface on it now, as well as your environmental health officer and your safety plan with Interior Health and your health authority will be asking to see your safety plans and your tracking plans. So take in consideration, how will your product be tracked and traced instead of a recall? Is it going to be a stamp and a series of numbers? Will it be just a series of numbers at the date that it was produced? Review your CFIA standards, which again, linked in the document, and consider food safety certification analysis if it's appropriate or applicable. How long does your product stay good for? Truly, how long does your product stay good for? And I'm not talking about when we get to the point where things are curdling. I'm talking about when it's still excellent quality. When's the last day it's still good quality? And that you can set as your best before date. And also consider how complex are your storage and transport needs. Is it necessary for your product to remain frozen or refrigerated while being transported? Because this could limit the amount of places that you sell to. So take that into consideration as well. Your packaging plans. Again, we'll go into this a little bit deeper later on, but check out the Canadian Food Inspection Agency standards and how it applies to your product and what your requirements are. If you have to create a nutritional fact table, it's not as scary as it sounds, I promise. We're going to talk about it a little bit. As well as your packaging design, you have to be careful about how your design work portrays a lifestyle or a health promise or a nutrient claim on the product itself. And also, before you approach anybody, very, very important here, is to ensure that you've sourced an excellent supplier for your packaging product. This year, we saw a shortage on glass jars and glass bottles because of the pandemic and because of supply chain issues. So do your best, find 4 different people that sell your packaging product and make sure that you have lots in stock just in case. All right, so if we've been approached, if we've been noticed, if somebody has come our way and we're starting to talk, or if the customer is handed in a letter at a store, we've been invited in for a meeting, I always recommend that we proceed with the utmost caution at our very first meeting. So much like really good relationships, a good client will respect your boundaries. So if you say things like, go in and have the conversations about what the shop looks for and what the contract looks like. And you can always say things like, I'd like to review this with my business advisor or with my business lawyer. I'm going to take this home and sleep on it for a couple of days. I'll be in touch. A good client will be okay with that and letting you take your time to figure out if this is a good deal for you. If possible, unless you're at a trade show, of course, avoid making decisions if you're in a high pressure situation with multiple vendors. I call them cattle calls. So I don't think it happens a lot out here from what I've heard, but in larger Canadian cities, occasionally a grocery store or a chain will approach somebody, and as that person comes in, all of a sudden they come in and all of their direct competition and the farmers markets are in the same room. And folks kind of say, okay, who would like to come on board with us today? And it's a high pressure situation. So be wary of that. If you do find yourself in that situation, do the same thing. Okay, I'm just going to grab this. Thank you so much. I'll see you later. I'm going to think about this for a little while. For your consideration is co-packing. This term, if your product is appropriate, this term can be, I jokingly call it the dream. So co-packing is when you hand over your recipe and your packaging to a large production facility, and they produce and sometimes even ship your product for you. This is great for people who make things like marshmallows or candy, drink mixes, baked goods, dehydrated meals. The list can go on and on. So take a look, think about it if it's right for you. If you do consider taking on a co-packer, which I have a good list of on your sheet, you can research and you can interview potential co-packers, talk to your food buddies, post in your Facebook group, ask, hey, has anybody worked with blah, blah, blah? It's a really good way to figure out. All right, so now we're going to review some basic contract terminology. Guaranteed sales. This is a big one, and you really want to watch for this. So guaranteed sales means that you are financially liable for any product that you sell to the store that does not move before its expiration date. And this is very common with some larger businesses. So a very quick example, let's say I am selling muffins and I come to the store with 25 muffins and I sell them at $1 each. I'd never sell them at $1 each. It should be much higher, but math. Okay. So I've sold the store 25 muffins at $1 each. And when I come back on Friday, only 5 have sold. So there's 20 muffins left. That under our guaranteed sales agreement, that means I'm only billing the store for $5. And that $20 is my problem. So it's not necessarily the best deal if you have a fast perish item like produce, baked goods, dairy. A good negotiation tactic to get through this is to offer a probationary period of around 90 days and say something like, at that point, we can gauge our level of sales and how much product we've moved, and we can base our sales going forward from there and kind of drop the guaranteed sales. Or you can say after 90 days, we'll set our levels because we'll have a good idea of sales, and then I'm willing to absorb 20% of the cost of what's left. There's good ways to negotiate through this so you're not stuck paying 100% of the product that doesn't sell. It's not a good deal, and it can be very financially draining for fast perish businesses. Other words to use to describe this, it might also be called a buyback or a refundable sale. Next is a percentage discount, and this is when a client rewards themselves for paying you early. So if you have a net 30 set up for your client, you'll have it set up for your client for net 30 days. And if the client has a percentage discount in the contract, it might look like net 45, 2%. So what this means is if the client pays you before 45 days, then they can have a 2% discount. And that's not necessarily viable for everyone. So especially if your term is net 30 and they paid you on 30 days and then help themselves to a 2% discount, it can be kind of frustrating. So when this is in a contract, it's worded as net 45, 2%. I've seen it occasionally as high as 5%. So do a little cost benefit analysis for yourself. If they're spending a lot of money with you, this could be worth it. You know, like it could be worth it for you just to eat that 2%, not a big deal at all. But if you're not comfortable with it, try to negotiate away from it and just say, you know, I really need 100% of my sales, so I'm happy to wait the 45 days. Thank you very much. But watch out for that because it's happened to a few folks I've worked with, including myself when I had my company. And I was really surprised the first time I got an invoice and saw a discount on it. Exclusivity means that you only sell this one product to this one store. So this can be for one product or even an entire line of a product. I don't usually recommend doing this with new clients. This is something you can explore after a year of the relationship. If you do agree to do this, so you know you'll be the only person with Mandy's muffins in Kelowna. I guarantee it, it's exclusivity, but you have to spend $1,000 a week on the product. That's what I mean by a minimum level. So if you are going to go exclusive, that's fine, but make sure it's worth your while. And don't ever put one of your top sellers up for an exclusivity deal, because you need those. Those are the staples and the foundation of your business. So create something new, or use a lesser known product for an exclusivity deal. And also ask for a list of the kind of excluded businesses upfront before the agreement. A story I have is a producer years ago made a cake for a health food co-op, and it was exclusive to the health food co-op. They had a deal with them. And a few weeks later, the coffee shop 4 blocks away wanted chunks of the cake to sell alongside cups of coffee. And the person selling the cake thought that was okay and sold to the cafe, and the health food co-op was insulted. But the person who sold to the cafe said, well, you're exclusive just as a grocery store and a health food co-op. I thought a cafe was different. So we could have avoided these negative feelings if we had just had a list of excluded businesses in writing upfront before we moved forward on it. The next term you might see in a contract is a display commitment hands-on. This one's very easy to explain. So we've all been in the grocery store before, and you've seen the bread guy with the ball cap and the onesie, and he's taking bread off the shelf and he's putting new bread on. This is a display commitment. So this means that the client might want you, every time you come by and make a stop at the store, to physically enter the store, pull all of your old stuff and put all the new stuff on and set up your display. Depending on the product, this can be a great thing or it can be the worst thing. It adds a lot of additional labor. So we're going from 15 minutes a stop unloading product to maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half. It can kind of turn things into a logistical nightmare, especially if you have 8 or 9 deliveries in a day and only one delivery person. It can also mess up the fluidity of your delivery, especially if you have people who want things brought to them before noon. It's not for every product, but I had a client years ago who made artisanal sodas, and she said, you know, the once a month delivery with the soda jerks walking in there in uniform was really important to her business model. The clients loved it. The people shopping loved it. So it can work, but again, you know your product better than anybody else. So choose what's best for your product. Price policy. I usually recommend that you maintain the right to increase your prices as the market dictates without repercussion. But you can also ask for a review every business quarter for you and your client, just check in together and say, okay, right now I'm selling you cartons of milk at $3 each for you to mark up. I'm going to need to put it up to $3.50 because I'm adding a health insurance policy for my staff, or the price of fuel is crazy, or, you know, so reserve that right to be able to increase your prices if you need to, because you don't want to be stuck with a lower price where you stop making money. Always speak with your representative or the store manager or whoever you deal with at that store directly. Don't pass the message along through anybody else. Make sure that you make direct contact with the person you speak with all the time about your price increase, and get confirmation in writing. Emails are a really perfect example. Phone calls are great, and don't get me wrong, I love a good phone call and I love a good in-person visit, but sometimes folks get forgetful, especially busy folks. So I love to have something in writing, and email is an electronic date timestamp proof of those things. It's pretty great. So even if you've just chatted with your representative at the store, send them an email after the fact. Hey, Jane, it was so nice seeing you this morning. This email is just to confirm that in about 30 days, you're going to see a price increase of 50 cents like we discussed. Thanks again. And then right there, you have the proof that the conversation happened and this is going on. You wouldn't believe how often customers don't really notice this, but some do. So I usually have a justification statement prepared just in case. And then if you end up getting a lot of pushback on a price increase, you can post it to your website, your social media, or even create a little sign to go at the third-party distributor's place itself, just to say, hey, really sorry that our price has gone up by $1, but we hired 4 new people and we want to pay a living wage. Something along those lines is really good to have. Your exit strategy. So sometimes things don't always go so well, and that's okay. But if we have a huge, huge client, so for example, if you have a chain and they are spending 70%, like they're paying you 70% of your your earnings, you know what I mean, every month. And then all of a sudden they turn around and they're like, yeah, no, I don't want to work with you anymore. That's pretty bad. And that's a pretty big hiccup in your cash flow. And we want to make sure we can avoid that as best as possible. So putting an exit strategy in place, you don't have to do this with all of your clients, but if they become a really big client, it's really good to have this in place. So an exit strategy is something like, we'll say, okay, if we decide that we don't want to work together anymore, you're going to let me know in writing. And then you will still purchase 70% of the levels you were purchasing prior to us deciding to part ways for the next 90 days. While we decide, while we go our separate ways. And that's great because the money coming in will give you time for your cash flow to continue to be positive, as well as you can scramble and find potentially a new vendor to replace those sales. So again, an exit strategy, especially if the client is a large, good spending client. All right, so we're all set up. We have our contract, we have our delivery strategies in place, and we're selling. And now we want to maintain that relationship. So it's kind of like, I always joke around and allude to personal relationships and marriages, and it's the same kind of idea. We want to really maintain this relationship here. So the first thing we want to do is continue to woo and impress our client. The biggest thing that a lot of folks overlook is your unpaid sales team. Your unpaid sales team are the people who work at the store. So while you should always be kind and polite to everybody working at the retail locations, it's even more important when you're selling stuff there, because if you're not kind and if you don't take the time to educate the staff about your product, they won't push it, and it'll just sit there on the shelf. So talking to the staff about your product when you come in, keeping them informed. And the coffee factor, I used to show up with a few trays of coffees. They loved it. And I'd give it out to everybody from the cash register to the receivers in the back. And $40 worth of coffee kept people happy with me and loyal with me. And whenever folks came through and said, oh, I need to buy some cookies, I don't know what kind, they would immediately think, that nice lady who brought us coffee, oh, you should try her stuff. It's really good. She's super nice. Consider doing something like that. Hands-on deliveries once a quarter. So if you have somebody else doing your deliveries, try to show up yourself once every 3 months and just have a look, walk around the store, deliver your stuff, chat with the department heads. How did this go? How did that go? Oh, nobody liked the lavender cookies. Okay, good to know. You'll kind of get some real information from them and really be able to continue to nurture the relationship. Offering to split promotion with the seller is a great way as well to nurture your relationship. So for example, if you have a pamphlet that you're giving out at a market, you can say, hey, Safeway, I'll put available at Safeway on my pamphlet if you help me pay for them or give me a couple $100. I used to do this with one of my big distributors, and essentially their money paid for the printing of my pamphlets, which was pretty cool. So it was win-win because my client got that promotion at my table and I got to save a little bit of scratch on the cost of printing. So very exciting stuff. Again, offering in-store demo days. So third-party sales is very different because you're not there with your face and your personality to sell your product. So doing an in-store demo, giving out samples, talking to folks about how to even use your product. I have these really beautiful berries. They make a gorgeous English trifle, or they make wonderful white chocolate scones, or, kind of educating the client on these products is really fun. And also having a product guide. I've included my own personal template for you to take, plagiarize, destroy, and make your own in the sheet as well. So it is a product guide. So it has a very quick little story about the background of your business. It might talk about your pricing. It will talk about your products and their benefits. And you hand these over to the folks who run the department at the store that you're selling to, or to the shop manager themselves. That way, if people come in and they have questions, they have the product guide right there. And then they kind of understand your product a little bit better. Ties back into the unpaid sales team thing. Continuing to nurture the relationship. My favorite hack was I would secret shop myself. Since I was in my 20s when I owned my first business, I used to show up at the stores and ask the staff to show me where my product was and explain it to me. And it was a lot of fun because I didn't look like the president of a little baking company and I learned a lot. And then when I was selling cross province, I would have friends and family go into locations in their towns and kind of stake out my stuff, talk to the staff, take a picture of the display. It's a really good way to make sure that your product is, in a good spot or being treated correctly, even, don't put a box in the sun, that kind of thing. So having pictures of that and being able to work with the client to ensure that the best quality product is reaching the consumer is very important. Training your staff, so chatting with the staff whenever you go in, and if they have questions about your product, letting them know so that way they can explain it. Having a comprehensive map on your business's website. So that's a map like where to find us. It's so easy and it takes 2 seconds and it fosters such goodwill with your clients. So it's another value add and a good way of spoiling your clients. So this is, you have a map of the area or the province and then all the happy little pins. And then, we're available at Safeway and Vernon. We're available here and there. It's a really wonderful way to help folks find you. Also, keeping your social media updating and tagging. I will jump in here and say, I completely understand with labor intensive products and agriculture, it is absolutely exhausting to even find 15 minutes at the end of the day to post on social media. Consider outsourcing it if you don't have the time to do so, but making the time to just say, hey, I'm out for delivery today. I'm headed into, I'm headed into Vernon, I'm headed into Kelowna, I'm headed into wherever I'm going to, and then tag the businesses. It's a really good way to foster goodwill with the third party folks who are selling your product. Also, your consumers can find you and they love that. Spoiling your vendor with what I call business roses. So just dropping by at random with some goodies, maybe some leftovers, maybe some ugly ducklings, some cookies that didn't work out or whatever, is a really nice way just to say hi and to put everyone at ease and have a nice casual conversation and see how your product is moving. Getting some specialty signage, maybe with your logo on it. Hey, this is grown right here. This is why it's special, or this makes a beautiful risotto, or this is great for roasting. That kind of stuff is very helpful. Applying a practical usage to your product is really, really helpful to the community. Delivery crew reports as well. So have your delivery driver maybe fill out a little report very quickly, what time they were in, what time they were out, and if the staff said anything to them. In my experience, the staff are very vocal with delivery drivers and will chat with them. So, your delivery driver might come back and say, since we switched that recipe, these are melting now. Or, the new containers, they're leaking milk everywhere. You'll kind of get that feedback that you might not get just by calling to check in on your own. So having your delivery crew do a report is pretty super. All right, now we're going to troubleshoot. Take a sip of my hibiscus tea here. My voice is getting dry. All right, so in troubleshooting, this is a huge one. I've helped so many people navigate through this because it's so sticky and it's deeply upsetting when somebody is late paying you. It really is, but it can be navigated. So my personal favorite way to navigate, or at least kick this off if somebody's really starting to fall behind on their payments with you, is to play dumb. So that's, oh, hey there, maybe an email. Oh, hey there, how's it going? I just noticed that your invoice is past due. Here's a new copy just in case you missed it. Let me know how it's going and see if you get a response from there. If it gets very, very severe, don't be afraid to cut off orders or explain to the store that you need to pause their account for a while until things are brought back up to speed. Offering a payment plan is a good olive branch as well. Going to collections or small claims is very costly, very time consuming, usually deeply upsetting for my clients, and you don't usually come out with a lot of cash either. So I usually try to negotiate through before it comes to that. So offer a payment plan. Hey, right now you owe us $700. Would you like to give us $350 for the next 2 weeks to bring your account back into a positive balance? Revisiting your terms. So maybe they have to go back to cash on delivery for a little while instead of having a net 30 term. And keep talking to the reps and the shop managers. Great practical story I have here is in my first year of having my big storefront and doing a lot of distribution, I was selling to a shop, and the owner used to have to give out the checks, and they fell about 6 weeks behind. And it was pretty substantial for me at the time. It was a couple $1,000s. So I was feeling pretty upset. And I kept asking the owner, and he kept kind of gaslighting me and putting me off, and it was getting irritating. So finally, one week when the manager called to place her order, I said, I'm really sorry. I don't think I'm going to be able to bring anything to you this week because you guys just owe me so much money right now, and I can't justify that. And you could have heard a pin drop. And she said, I'm sorry, pardon. So I explained to her again. I said, you guys owe me quite a bit of money. And she said, I'm going to call you back in a few minutes. And then 10 minutes later, she called me back and said, your check will be ready for you here tomorrow in the full amount in the morning. So sometimes just a matter of, getting accounting to talk to management, maybe getting all the different departments to talk to each other. So talk to your person of trust at that location is a really good way to go about it. Poor sales. This is one folks get a lot too. Your product's just not selling here. We just don't have the demographic for it. That's not always necessarily true. So this is a good time to pull out those secret shopping documents that you've created and give them a good look over. Where was your product the last time? Was it in a dark back corner beside the deli counter, even though it's a plant-based product? You know what I mean? Was it buried in the corner beside all the clearance food, so it wasn't very attractive? Have a look at those documents and see how you can help the shop to improve. Offer to come by and do an in-store sampling or demo, like I mentioned before, to kind of rejuvenate and remind folks that you're still there. Show them your face, talk to customers directly, explain practical uses for your product. Use geo-targeted boosted social media ads and content. If you have somebody who is social media savvy in your life, you can advertise on Facebook or Instagram for like $5, and you can literally zero it into a postal code. So if there's a store in a neighborhood that's just not doing well, you can advertise to everybody who lives in that neighborhood that Mandy's berry farm is now available at this store, and we have these fabulous berries right now. It's a pretty good way to go about it. And also consider doing a cross promotion with the store itself. So, doing a flyer feature, maybe being a featured vendor on their social media pages or channels, also a good way to kind of kick it back into gear and remind people that you are still around. Delivery drama. The delivery world is very, very interesting because it is so fluid. Deliveries can be held up from anything from forest fires to weather events to snow. It can be a lot. And I've always said too that the receivers of these stores, I admire them so much because they have one of the most stressful jobs I've ever seen. They are running back and forth all day. They are unpacking, they are counting, they are moving things into the store. There's a bell ringing at the back door constantly. It can be a lot. So again, always love your receivers, all the love on the receivers. Keep reports if you have a delivery driver in-house who's working under you, or even ask your courier if they keep kind of reports and stuff like that too, just in case there is anything happening. Review your strategy on delivery and feel free to refresh it if it's not working. If you keep hitting the loading dock while it's closed for lunch, which a lot of shops do, they usually close between 12 and 1. So that the receiver can go eat lunch uninterrupted. Maybe review your strategy and see if you should be grouping things differently, and consider offering or hiring more help or get a third party to start delivering for you. So I find that delivery ends up being a big issue for a lot of folks. So getting a good streamlined thing into place is always excellent. Customer complaints. So this is different because you have a third party handling customer complaints about your product, if any. And if it's not handled correctly, or if there is a big issue, this can kind of create some resentment with the staff. So if you have to do a recall, do everything you can to help the staff process it, so that way they don't feel angry with you about it. It's always really good etiquette to handle it yourself. So if the staff calls you and says, hey, somebody bought these cookies and said that they taste off, I would always say, okay, great. Please give them the phone number to the bakery. I'm going to handle it myself, or pass me their phone number or their email. And then I would invite them down to the bakery for a new box of cookies. Have a service recovery strategy in place. So service recovery is when things go wrong and you have an official policy. So for example, I will replace exactly what it is you bought and didn't like free of charge. Just come on by the farm, come on by the store, come on by the shop. I'll come by your house and leave it on your porch. Have a service recovery strategy in place and train everybody who answers emails or answers the phone at your business to implement this strategy. And ensure that your direct contact information is with the staff at the store itself, so that way they can reach out to you, especially if something's going down. A fun story, a friend of mine has a wonderful specialty bake shop, and she's famous for these ginger snaps. And one day she had a new gal on and she didn't pay close enough attention. And long story short, 500 boxes of ginger snaps went out that had all been prepared with cumin and instead of ginger, which, it sounds nice with some hummus, but might not make her be super happy. So she immediately went into damage control and had reached out to the shops and had talked to all of the staff and had trained all of her staff exactly what to say and do whenever disappointed customers did call the shop. So everybody ended up getting new boxes of ginger snaps, and we're all super happy. All right, so this is our break slide now. You can press pause, grab a tea, get settled in, maybe review your notes, and we're gonna jump right into a labeling. So now we're gonna chat a little bit more about labeling your Canadian food product. You folks out here have your environmental health officers that can help you navigate the CFIA protocols and the safety standards a little bit as well. But the CFIA website can be a very intimidating place. It's filled with a lot of jargon and a lot of really, really long, dry sentences. And I found a few years ago that I couldn't really get this sorted through. And I had a client who was having troubles with an entity in Ontario, and I ended up throwing up a flag in a food industry group. And that's how I met my friend Amy, who is a food scientist and a former CFIA agent. So everything that I'm about to show to you next, Amy and I developed together in plain language for good folks like you. So it's easy to understand, easy to navigate through. And there are a ton of links in your page that's coming your way after this webinar. So many links to the CFIA, to all kinds of decision-making trees, things like that. But this is a product that, this is a presentation that Amy and I have developed together. So it's a little bit easier to understand and a little bit easier to navigate. And I hope that you find it useful. So 20 years ago, you used to just send the CFIA your design for your label. You'd send them your nutritional facts table and all of your information and ingredients. And somebody would put a big old stamp on that and say, yay, go nuts. Unfortunately, this is no longer the case. If you do reach out to the CFIA and somebody actually does respond to you, you'll find that the expectation is that you do your due diligence and you go through the website and you educate yourself on the rules. And if there is a problem, that they will call you. And it can be very nerve-wracking for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially because so many of us spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on logo and custom packaging. And it can be really disheartening to find out that that's not up to code with the CFIA. So you must do your due diligence. You must take a look at the website and the links, but I'm here to help you and clear up some things in the next few slides. So I hope that you find those useful. So before you think about reading things about the CFIA, what do you need? You need to have an edible product. If applicable, have your recipe in front of you. Have your insurance in place that supports your distribution business model. You have a clean and licensed preparation facility, and you have viable bulk packaging items selected. Again, can't emphasize this enough. If you find beautiful packaging, don't get carried away with the romance of something you're only going to be able to get delivered over once a year. Find something you can get consistently that's going to work for your product. So the first thing we're going to talk about are NFTs, or nutritional fact tables. This is when you flip something over and on the back, it says how many calories, what the ingredients are, etc. So who is exempt? Who doesn't have to have a nutritional fact table? Well, if you're selling your fruits, vegetables, or herbs fresh, you don't have to have a nutritional fact table. But the second that you freeze, preserve, dehydrate, and put those into a package, unfortunately you do. So keep that in mind. If you're selling a product in the raw whole form, you don't have to have one. Pre-portioned single foods in restaurants, so those teeny little packages of peanut butter and jam. Milk doesn't have to have a nutritional fact table, so partially skimmed, skim goats, partially skimmed goats, etc. You can see the whole list right there. straight from the CFIA website to this presentation. Those are the dairy products that are exempt from nutritional fact tables, and also products where the display space is too tiny, so less than the size listed there, or one bite confections like those beautiful little caramels that I'm addicted to. You can't fit a nutritional fact table on that, but you do need to ensure, if you are making little candies or single wrap confections like that and selling them, you need to make that nutritional fact table accessible to consumers via a website or your social media channels or anybody who asks, or another medium. You need to make sure that's accessible. I always say to folks, when in doubt, just make a nutritional facts table, so that way you have it in case you are approached. Who is usually exempt? Again, this all depends on the nature of your product and what you're adding or taking away from it. So foods with no caloric value, so like vinegar, bottled water, alcohol. What's funny though is with alcohol, like the second you put candy or nuts into that alcohol, now you need it. Raw single ingredient meats or fish, unless it's ground. If it's ground, you have to have a nutritional facts table. If it's prepared, processed, or sold in-house, so if you own a grocery store and you are making your own buns in the back, you are not obligated to put a nutritional fact table onto that. If you are selling just at a farmer's market or at a stand, you don't have to have a nutritional fact table. And if it's repacked to be sold at the retail location, so if I'm in the back of my little shop and I'm slicing up some local ham and I'm putting it into my butcher's paper, I don't have to have a nutritional fact table on that. So how in the world do you get a nutritional fact table? Well, the option one is you can send out your sample for professional analysis. And again, the environmental health officers out here will make that call probably. It can be costly, so ensure that the lab is accredited before you proceed. And I have links to all of this information in the sheet. Option two is to use an online database program to generate and calculate your nutritional fact tables. Amy and I both really love ReciPal. There's a free trial for your first few recipes, and then after that, it's about 20 bucks a recipe, versus a lab where occasionally it can be $1,200 to $1,800 a recipe. And remember that the CFIA will always look to your food label as they want to ensure that it is representative, factual, and true in regards to your product. So make sure anything on your label, you're prepared to back up. How do you determine a serving size? So on the nutritional fact table, it'll say serving. If you pick up any product in your house, on the back, you can see that it has a serving size listed. So how do you package your product for consumption is the first thing you'll consider about a serving size. So are you selling a tiny package of 2 cookies, or are you selling a big box of 40 cookies? So on the box of 40 cookies, the serving size would be, 2 cookies, where on the package of 2 cookies just wrapped up together, the serving size would be 1 serving / 2 cookies. Again, you get me on the right day, I could polish through those 40 cookies. That would be a serve, but I digress. So how do you package your product for consumption, and can it be reasonably consumed by one person in a sitting? So another good example of this is if you're selling fresh honey. People aren't going to use half a cup of honey in one sitting. They're probably going to use a teaspoon because they're putting it into their tea or putting it onto their yogurt. So that would be what would be reasonably consumed by one person in a sitting. There's a decision tree link from the CFIA website. It's a pretty useful tool, and it's linked onto the page that will be sent off to you when this is done. And does this best represent the product for sale to the consumers? Make sure that that's crystal clear. And could you justify this suggested serving? If a CFIA agent called you tomorrow, could you say, absolutely, people are only using a teaspoon of honey at a time? Allergens declarations and your design of your label. So ingredient declarations, who has to declare and post their ingredients? Well, all pre-packaged products with more than one ingredient must declare their ingredients and components in a list unless they are exempt. A component, by the way, are things like food coloring and extracts. The priority allergens, which we'll get into in a moment, must be declared again, even if they are in your ingredient list. So again, go pick up something in your house that has peanuts in it, and you'll see that on the ingredient list, it'll say peanuts, and then after it'll say again in bold, this product contains peanuts. It must be on there twice. how to list ingredients. So if there is more than one ingredient in your product, always list your ingredients in descending order of weight. So a weight is how much the ingredient weighed before it was cooked, processed, pickled, etc. In order to protect your trade secrets, the CFIA will permit you to move certain items to the end of the listing. So again, extracts, spices, that kind of thing. Very important though to say right out of the gate that salt must always be an accurate weight and must always be placed in the right spot and has to be declared. You can't leave salt off the list. Things you are allowed to leave off of your ingredient list, though, are things like wax coatings, sausage casings, processing aids, and things that don't remain. A really good example of something that doesn't remain is cooking spray. And priority food allergens and gluten must always, always, always be declared on your list of ingredients in plain, recognizable language, and then declared again after this list. In an allergy statement. So example, this product contains gluten and peanuts. Priority allergens right now under the Canadian government are eggs, milk, mustard, peanuts, crustaceans, mollusks, fish, sesame, soy, sulfites, tree nuts, wheat, and triticale. I always mispronounce that, sorry. And triticale is a hybrid of wheat and rye. Gluten sources that you must declare are barley, oats, rye, triticale, and wheat. And if you're exporting products to the USA, make sure you know that the US considers coconut a tree nut allergen and it has to be declared. Well, we're on the topic of priority allergens. I have it on good authority that priority allergens coming down the pipe in Canada in the next couple of years will be onions, garlic, and lupins. Lupins and legumes actually are going to be coming up as priority allergens. So if you make a product with any of those, remember that those are coming down the pipe probably in the next few years and will be on this list in the future. Components and use. So the component does not need to be listed in detail on a label. So for example, I had a client who was selling special cakes to a shop at Christmas time and had all this red and green food coloring, and the food coloring had like a billion little ingredients on its own. You don't have to break it down. You can just say red number 4, green number 5, bada boom, you're done. So you don't have to completely break it down. But if the component, for example, almond extract contains an allergen, then it has to be listed and it has to be declared again. So components are things like extracts or colorings. Don't ever hide an allergen in the component. Keep things quick and convenient for your consumer. Transparency is so important for the consumers as well when they're selecting a product. So always just list everything. Cross-contamination is a big one as well. So especially if you're using a shared kitchen space like an incubator or a food processing facility, you have to declare the unintentionally added allergens. So if you are pressing apple cider at the food processing plant in town, but there's somebody beside you who comes and bakes off their peanut butter cookies, you are making a gluten and a peanut statement on the back of the label of your product. So it might say, contains traces of peanuts or manufactured in a facility that also processes peanuts. Please don't ever skip out on this. Allergens can kill people. They're very, very serious. And again, transparency is always the best policy. Health claim. Oh. So I'm going to preface this one by saying, I'm here to share information with you. This is not necessarily, these policies are not necessarily something that I'm championing. I'm just here to share information with you so we can all play by the rules, so we can all understand them. Health claim is probably one of the most hotly debated items whenever we're discussing this on like live, and whenever I've been discussing this on panels in the past about health claims. I get a lot of other kids, people will say, well, my direct competitor says, why can't I? Never ever make a health claim on your label without speaking to and clearing it with a CFIA expert. So this is prevents cancer, creates perfect skin, boosts immunity, These are all health claims. And yes, I do appreciate and understand that we do see this on our direct competitor's product, and it is frustrating, but you can get yourself into some pretty hot water with the CFIA if you are making those claims. You can make a nutrient content claim if it's justified, but keep it real. So nutrient content is something like great source of vitamin C, great source of zinc or iron, great source of fiber. But again, if there's like 5% fiber in your product and you're claiming it's a great source of fiber, that's not keeping it very real. These are Amy's words exactly on this slide, and I love them. At the end of the day, we always have to remember, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So really be careful and take into context. If you're making a health claim, you are much better off to make a nutrient content claim. Français. So you must have bilingual language on your ingredient list, your nutritional facts table, and your identifying label. And your identifying label is the front, where it says frozen berries, or, you know, packed ground beef, that kind of thing. En français, s'il vous plaît. So do not rely, please, Amy and I have seen some things. Do not rely on Google Translate to create your labels for you. Hire a translating professional, or talk to somebody who's francophone in your community, and do your due diligence to ensure it is comfortable, conversational, real French that's happening. Again, if you can't find somebody in your community, ask your followers just to look through a list and help you out with your translation. If you're really stuck, you know, do some Googling and find some translators online and just pay somebody. They're usually very reasonable to translate the names of your products for you. And now about the look of your product. So the CFIA is within their rights to examine your business name as well as your logo and your design to see how the customer will interpret it too. So for example, if I'm selling Mandy's old-fashioned bread, and there's a nice little old lady on the cover with like one oven, but really it's a huge factory way out of town, and they might consider that not representative of the product. So they will interpret your logo and your label in regards to the character, quality, or composition of the food, the method of production, the geographical origin, as well as the relationship between the consumption of food or an ingredient and food and health. Again, the health claims and health imagery and all that kind of stuff, just be so careful when you are approaching that. And official symbols of the government, such as the Canadian flag, believe it or not, emblem or crest, Health Canada and CFI logo are actually trademarks, and you're not allowed to use them unless you have written permission to do so. So please be careful when you're designing your labels. Inspection marks are prescribed marks, stamps, seals, product legends, words, designs, or any combination of those. So the Canada Organic, Shop BC, these are all considered appropriate, but make sure that you have the permission in writing somewhere safe in case you are challenged about your logo and your label. Okay, so now we've gone through all of that. So let's pretend that somebody from the CFIA is reaching out to you, which does happen. So what I always say to my clients is, if you don't understand the rules, then please don't dabble in them. Spend the money, do your due diligence, and hire a designer or a team who are CFIA literate, so you aren't having to throw out 20 grand worth of packaging or logos, that kind of thing. There is a wonderful list in the sheet again of designers and packaging folks who do understand and are okay to work with the CFIA on this product to make sure that you are successful. And ensuring that your ducks are in a row the first time will save you so much time and stress in the long run. So reasons that a CFIA agent may get in touch with you. If they've received a direct complaint about your product claims or business. This happened to a friend of mine who owned a plant-based cafe, and a woman was angry because she went in there and she bought a cheeseburger without being told that it was a plant-based everything burger. And she took the time to call the CFIA, and so the CFIA inspectors came down to my friend's cafe and gave her a bit of a time. So that does happen occasionally. An agent may have randomly purchased your product to test and check for compliance. And on a personal note, this is exactly what happened to me. One of the grocery stores I was selling to back east was right beside the CFIA head office. And I guess an agent on their lunch break didn't like my 100% vegan stickers, which is a claim. by the way, pro tip, bought my cupcakes, took them back to the office, tested them, and then called me to say that they were coming down to the facility to ensure that it was indeed 100% vegan. And it was not a fun day. Out here, I believe that the CFIA offices, if my research is correct, are in Kelowna. So an agent occasionally, if an agent sees something, even when they're just out shopping casually, that kind of piques their interest, they might pick it up and give it a test. And you may have been flagged by somebody or by an agent for making a health or nutrient claim that's not within the regulations. Again, the nutrient and the health claims are huge, huge, huge. It's a good way to not get good attention from the CFIA. So what now? You're within your rights to ask for a little bit of time to consult with your experts and your legal team. So say something like, if they do call you, you can say something like, thank you so much for reaching out. I'm going to get back to you in about a week's time. I just need that to get my lawyer and my paperwork together for you before we have our first meeting. And the agents will comply with that. You are within your rights to ask for that. Sadly, the CFIA is a lot like the CRA, and you cannot obstruct an investigation. They are coming. It is happening. It is not always fun, but if you stay pleasant and professional and just do your best to stay positive about it, you can usually get more accomplished, win more flies with honey, right? Every single time you talk to an agent or deal with an agent, even for setting up the meetings, keep an electronic log of all the encounters. Today, I talked to agent so-and-so, badge number, blah, 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 at 10:15 a.m. And we agreed that 1 week from today, I will reach out again and book an appointment for them to come and look at the facility. I just need to talk to my people. So keep an electronic log of that. There are people who can defend you directly to the CFIA. They're all included on the sheet I have for you. So reach out to them. They're the experts. Do not count on your business lawyer here. This is government, and they really, they're just not versed enough to really do battle with the CFIA. So try to reach out to an expert. Always ask for help from the experts. If you're not certain, don't ever assume things. It's very, very dangerous. So always reach out to the CFIA experts. Well, I hope that you all had a really nice time today. I hope that you enjoyed my little presentation. I hope you have some questions for me, and I'm really looking forward to meeting all of you at the live presentation on February the 22nd. I hope you have a great, great day.